We start with breaking news and a CNN exclusive out of northern Syria, where the largest U.S. troop withdrawal is now underway. This is new video from CNN's cameras on the ground as U.S. troops prepare to withdraw from eastern Syria. And in a surprise visit to Afghanistan today, U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper said about 1,000 troops are withdrawing on the ground and in the air and are, I'm quoting now, being repositioned in western Iraq from northern Syria. The troops are not headed home, contrary to how the president has been selling it. U.S. Secretary Esper said they will be in operations to defend Iraq and to conduct counter-ISIS missions. According to Esper, a U.S. brokered ceasefire in northern Syria generally seems to be holding. I'm quoting him now. However, one Turkish soldier and more than a dozen Syrian defense forces have been killed in the past 24 hours, and both sides are accusing the other of violating the agreement. Under the agreement, Syrian Kurds have until Tuesday to abandon a large piece of land in a buffer zone along Turkey's border. Speaking today, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo defended the agreement.
This was about getting a ceasefire, a secure area, and that this, in fact, will save lives in that very space. That was our mission set. We accomplished it, and now we need to make sure that the commitments that were made in that statement are honored.
Earlier this month, President Trump announced the pullout of U.S. troops in the area, and then just days later, Turkey launched a military offensive to force Kurds out of the area. CNN's Nick Paton Walsh is following U.S. troop movements, and he is there on the scene in northeastern Syria. Nick, what have you been witnessing?
Well, you saw in that video earlier on today, we came across, fair to say, over 100, possibly hundreds of these U.S. vehicles gathering at a base near Hasaka, rallying, it seems, from various different points in the country, a number of them from what they call the Kobani landing zone. That's the large airstrip near a cement factory outside of Kobani, which has for a long time been the main U.S. and other coalition members' headquarters in the fight against ISIS. They've all been pulling back today. There have been social media videos circulating of those movements to this base on Hasaka, from which I understand they'll then continue their journey at some point in the hours and days ahead into Iraqi Kurdistan. Now that is key. That is where Mark Esper, the Secretary of Defense, said that they would redeploy, potentially continuing missions into Syria to attack ISIS or the broader ISIS mission as a whole. But this large movement, it will be quite substantial when it gets underway. The largest ground movement they've done since they've been in Syria is, I think, deeply symbolic for many of those troops. It brings to a kind of an end in imagery to some degree these hectic couple of weeks. It's a nightmare, I think, for military planners to have your movements broadcasted or announced before you've had a chance to execute contingency plans. So this withdrawal has been done, I think, very much under hasty circumstances with a lot of complicated logistics. Because remember, there is an expanding, changing presence of the Syrian regime here. Russian forces moving and often into the vacuum too, sometimes acting as peacekeepers. And then this enormous Turkish-Syrian rebel force backed by Turkey, which is moving around, taking areas off the Syrian Kurds. A lot of changing dynamics here, but the key one today, US troops in a large withdrawal, essentially the big withdrawal here, which got underway at some point today and will continue, as I say, in the hours and days ahead. A very symbolic moment, I think, for those soldiers, for the Syrian Kurds, who've lost over 10,000 sons and daughters fighting against ISIS. There'll be a mixture, I think, of sadness to see those soldiers go. I think many people here realise that the decision for them to depart has not been those of the soldiers personally, but of their masters like President Trump in Washington. So mixed feelings too amongst Syrian Kurds who feel America has generally betrayed them. But still, this large convoy on its way, America's withdrawal here underway. Back to you.
All right, Nick Paton Walsh will check back with you in northern Syria there. Thank you. U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham, one of President Trump's most ardent defenders, has been openly critical of moving U.S. troops out of northern Syria. And earlier today, he clarified his concerns.
The president indicated he was going to pull out whatever number of troops there were in that buffer zone, which, as I understand it, was far less than 50. Is that what it was?
Well, it's not so much the 28. What I was concerned about is, number one, the president did not give Turkey a green light to invade Syria. But he didn't say red either. He said he gave a yellow light, and you don't give yellow lights in the Mideast.
I'm joined now by Fareed Zakaria, host of Fareed Zakaria GPS. Fareed, good to see you. So was the U.S. troop pullout a green light to Turkey to move into northern Syria?
Oh, there's no question it was a green light. You know, in a sense, Erdogan called Trump asking for the green light. There is no circumstance in which Turkey would have invaded if there were U.S. troops there. In other words, Turkey would have had to fire on U.S. troops. That was what was holding them back for 5 years. So there's no doubt that that the United States acceded to this. President Trump later tried to deny that he acceded to it, but he absolutely acceded to it. And you know, in a sense, it is part of his plan. Just get the hell out and let the locals kill each other.
Is it irreversible?
It's very hard, I think, to now get back to unravel this. This is one of the great tragedies of what Trump has done, because he has given the Turks this kind of safe haven, this sphere of influence in Syria that they have long wanted. They've wanted it because it allows them to push the refugees that they have in Turkey in there. It allows them to keep the Kurds at a distance. It also benefits Assad in Syria, Iran, Russia. And the most important thing is, how would you get the Kurds to trust you again? You know, these are the people who fought and died for the United States. They were literally the ones who fought and died to defeat ISIS. And we totally betrayed them. And can you imagine going back to them and saying, okay, guys, will you trust us again one more time? Very hard to imagine that happening.
There are current and retired U.S. military generals who are saying, you know, not only is the U.S. credibility threatened, but years of work of either strangling or containing ISIS has now been undone, that you really can't put that genie back into the bottle. Are they right?
Well, the most important sense in which they're right is this. Almost certainly in one of these ungovernable spaces, probably in Syria, some of these terrorist groups, probably a version of ISIS or remnant, will come back. The issue is, we had found this beautiful formula where we got the Kurds to do the fighting for us while we provided air power, where the United States provided air power, intelligence, logistics, and things like that. But the actual fighting was being done by the Syrian Kurds because they were better at it. They knew the place, they knew the language, and they were not foreign occupiers. You see, that is what the biggest problem the United States has had is when it goes into these places, then it owns territory in the middle of the Middle East. And think about Iraq, Afghanistan, that's always a problem. So the United States is going to have to take this on without a local force, because what local force is going to trust the United States when Washington says the next time, we've got your back? You'd have to be a fool to believe Washington, given what just happened.
You mentioned Iran, Russia being empowered. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, told Trump in that contentious White House face-to-face, all roads lead to Putin. Turkey and Russia are meeting this week. What is likely to be said, forged, or perhaps even solidified?
More than anything else, I think what these countries want is greater influence and kind of unilateral ability to be involved and dominate the Middle East. The biggest obstacle has been the United States. So by America withdrawing, what it means is it gives Russia a free hand, it gives Turkey a free hand, and of course many of these powers have interests that are antithetical to those of the United States. So the United States will have to get comfortable with the Middle East that looks a lot less amenable to American interests, amenable to concerns of America, from Israel's security to stability of oil flows and such. The United States has always been able to shape the geopolitical balance in the Middle East to make sure that those kinds of concerns are taken care of. Now we'll be a spectator.
Fareed Zakaria, host of Fareed Zakaria GPS, thank you so much.